All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to do something a little different. We're not just going to talk about saving for retirement, we're going to look at it like an engineer would. We're talking about designing, about building a predictable, reliable paycheck for your future.
But before we even lay the first brick, I want to start by saying something really important. If you're here listening to this, chances are you've already done a lot of things right. You've worked hard, you've been disciplined, you've saved your money, you've already built a solid foundation.
So look, this is not about tearing everything down and starting over from scratch. Not at all. This is about respecting the powerful position you've already put yourself in, and then figuring out how we can optimize it, how we can make it stronger, more efficient, and ready for anything. Now, when you think about the architecture of retirement, it's traditionally stood on three main pillars. You've got Social Security down at the bottom as the base. Then you have pensions, which, let's be honest, are getting pretty rare these days. And then you have your qualified plans, your 401k or your IRA. But if you look closely at this design, you can see there's a piece missing. The structure isn't quite complete. And that missing piece, well, that's what leads us to the biggest engineering challenge that almost every single person faces in modern retirement. And listen, this isn't a personal failing. It's a structural deficit that's literally baked into the system we all use. What I love about this visual is how clearly it lays out the problem. When you do the math, you realize that Social Security and those old school pensions were only ever designed to replace about 60, maybe 65% of your income. That's it. That's what they were built for. Which leaves this glaring, dangerous gap of 35 to 40%. And that entire burden, all of that heavy lifting, now falls squarely on your other assets, your 401k, your savings. That's a job it was never really designed to do all by itself. And, it gets even trickier because as you're trying to use your savings to bridge that gap, you're not doing it in a vacuum. You're facing four invisible but incredibly powerful headwinds that can chew away at your money, especially when you need it most, when you start taking distributions. I want you to think of your retirement savings as this incredible bridge that you've spent your entire career building. It's meant to get you safely to the other side. But these headwinds are like these constant environmental forces, wind, rain, corrosion, that are always testing the structural integrity of that bridge. Let's break them down. First up, market volatility. A huge market downturn right as you retire, this is what we call sequence of returns risk, is absolutely devastating. It can cause permanent mathematical damage to your plan because you're forced to sell low, and you may never ever recover from that initial hit. Headwind number 2 is inflation. I like to call this one the quiet crusher. It's not a big, scary market crash. It just silently, day after day, year after year, eats away at your purchasing power. Over a 20 or 30-year retirement, it can force you into a slow, steady decline in your lifestyle. Third, we've got the huge question mark of future taxes. See, with a 401k or an IRA, you haven't paid taxes yet. You've just deferred them. You're essentially making a bet that tax rates are going to be lower for you in the future. But what if that bet is wrong? And that leads us straight into our fourth headwind, the very real, almost certain probability of rising tax rates. I mean, just look at our national debt and historical trends. It's really not a question of if rates will go up, but when and by how much. And that just pours gasoline on the fire of that future tax risk. Okay, so that sounds pretty intense, right? But here's the good news. We can engineer a structure that's built to withstand these forces. So let's start with market volatility. The answer is a simple but incredibly powerful concept called the zero floor. This blueprint shows you the core mechanic. It's an index strategy that's engineered to give you participation when the market goes up, but it contractually eliminates the downside risk. You get to enjoy the growth without ever suffering the losses. So how does this actually work? Let's break it down. Step 1, when the market goes up, you go up. Your account gets credited with interest. You're climbing those green stairs. Step 2, here's the cool part. A mechanical ratchet locks in your gains every year. That new higher value is now your new floor. It's protected. And then step 3, if the market has a bad year and goes down, you just hit that red steel beam, the 0% floor. You earn 0. You don't lose a single dime of your principal or your locked-in gains. And this chart, wow, this says it all. This shows the long-term power of that principle. Over a 25-year period that had some of the worst market crashes in history, 2000, 2008, 2020, this index strategy comes out ahead.
Why? Not by being riskier, but by simply mathematically eliminating those catastrophic years of loss. Winning by not losing.
All right, so we've engineered a shield for market risk. That's huge. But now let's tackle that other major headwind, the constant drag of future taxes. On the left, you see the world you're probably living in, the 401k hourglass trap. You've essentially made the IRS your senior business partner, and they get a cut of every single dollar that comes out of that account. But on the right, that's a completely different structure. That's a tax-advantaged vault where you can access your money completely tax-free. So how do you build that vault? Well, it's not a loophole. It's right there in the tax code. It's engineered using a specific section of the code, IRS Code 7072. This is what allows for the creation of a tax-free pipeline for your money, letting you completely bypass that ordinary income tax drag that plagues every traditional retirement account.
So now let's put all the pieces together. Because the real power in this approach isn't buying a bunch of different products for different problems. No, it's about having a single, unified blueprint that gives you confidence. Think of it like this. A properly engineered financial vehicle can act as a single structural chassis. It integrates everything we've talked about, the zero-floor indexing to protect you from the market, the tax-free income stream to protect you from the IRS, and it can even include accelerated living benefits for major health crises. It solves multiple complex risks all within one efficient design.
Which brings us to the most important point of all, and the one strategic question I'm going to leave you with. Looking at the financial reality of our country, looking at the math, does it really make sense to keep kicking your tax bill down the road, deferring it into a future where income tax rates are almost guaranteed to be higher than they are today? That's the core question this whole engineering approach is designed to help you answer.